Hello and a warm welcome to you. I thought it'd be good to update you all on what I've been up to in the last couple of weeks in terms of changes in the portfolio. And stay tuned right to the end of this video because you'll see what my new largest position is. So I'm going to go through the individual stocks I've been buying and selling over the last couple of weeks. It's been a bit busier than it normally has. That's because of a lot of market volatility in particular stocks. So I've taken advantage where possible. So I'm going to start off with a sale. And that sale is JD.com. Now, I think JD.com is a good business, but I'm quite exposed to China across my portfolio, with this one, Huya and Alibaba being the prime exposures, as well as a little bit of index exposure as well. And what I wanted to do is reduce that China exposure in aggregate, but also double down on the stock that I thought was best value. So I've sold my JD position around about this area here. So it's a very marginal profit I've made on it, but it is still following rule 1, don't lose money. And I think if we look at the statistics for JD, there's trading PE which looked fine, especially for a growing business, but that full PE looks very high. Now I have taken part of that money out of the Chinese exposure, but the other part has then gone into a purchase, and that purchase is probably no surprise, it's Alibaba. I've done a couple of videos on it, and I still think it's a good price, trailing 4p below 20. So I increased my position. Alibaba was the largest stock holding at the time of my portfolio of making these transactions. Current price, it's still undervalued. I think there's still a margin of safety, and there's a good chance of doubling your money in 5 years. But I've kind of got to the point now where I've probably topped out on my level of China exposure that I want, so probably not going to be adding too much more to this stock. Yeah, this is a great company. If you do a calculation on free cash flow and some of the growth rates of the company, this should be hitting $300 a share at some point in the next 5 years. I'd be very, very surprised if it didn't. And I love below my average in a company I believe in, because A, it reduces the risk in terms of it's less time to actually get to that break-even point, and then it increases the upside because your average is lower. So that was the first purchase. If we head back to the sales, and I've actually sold my entire position in Perdoceo Education Corporation. Now, this is one that I think is probably a bit undervalued. It's one of the sort of beaten down cigar butt type stocks, actually. Now, but looking at my overall portfolio, before it has too many holdings, I want to simplify, make it easier to work and manage the portfolio, and also be more concentrated in the positions that I'm more confident in. So this is actually one of those where I've sold out the position entirely, just over $11 a share, just because I'm less confident in this one than some of my other holdings, and I was probably less convinced, have less conviction on this than of some of the other companies. So therefore, I've sold this one, simplified my portfolio, and that brought me a bit of cash. And that cash was used for the company that's coming up last to this video, which is my new largest stock holding. And I think that's one of the big learnings for me over sort of the last 12 months is, yes, there's lots of things on sale. It doesn't mean you have to buy them all. It's best, generally speaking, to be a little bit more concentrated and bet bigger on the ones that have sort of good risk-reward ratio, the ones I'm most convinced in. And it's looking at that sort of portfolio level effect. That's what I've been trying to do here. Right, another sale. Now, this is Diamondback Energy, and I've got quite a lot of exposure to commodities and fossil fuels and oil in particular. I've also got holding in Shell, and I've got an oil ETF. And Diamondback Energy was an opportunity. So at the end of 2020, I think it's pretty much 30th of December, I bought this. And my objective was to make a 100% return on this stock. And I have. My overall return is 102%, and my position's now closed entirely. And I sold in the $106 range. Now, I don't think this is necessarily completely topped out. Potentially could be a bit more to go, but it is dependent on the oil price. I wanted to reduce my exposure a little bit to oil, lock in that really nice return. So there's been a good boost to the portfolio, and I've been using that cash for other opportunities, which I think have then got the really big upside. So I've got a couple of purchases coming up a bit later on. Okay, at my final sale, this is probably the company, again, that too many holdings, wanted to simplify. I think looking at the companies that potentially I was less convinced in, or perhaps wasn't as knowledgeable about compared to some, this was one of them. I think there's a little bit more risk with this company. And again, I've waited until I've just gone over that kind of break-even position, and I've sold my entire holding. And it was over 1% of the portfolio, actually, so that's given me a nice little cash boost again. Now, I'm not saying that this is topped out. I'm not saying you can't make money from this. But for me, it's how do I pick my favourite set of companies. I need to get rid of some to concentrate, make my life easier, make my returns more meaningful from the ones I'm most convinced in. So it's that really consistent story. I've been focusing on portfolio management and then using cash to double down on opportunities. So that's why this one has been sold. Okay, we've got a little purchase here. Now, Peak Fintech Group, or PKKFF, there's a little drop, 1 day drop. I think there was a short report that came out and the stock absolutely tanked. It's gone here, look, you can see from 9 to 6 in a matter of days. So I managed to, in fact, I think within day, it may have been in the 5s, if memory serves, but I managed to get in and add to my position, and I lowered my average from 10 to 8.5 on this one. It has recovered a little bit since then. Yeah, that's because it's over the counter. They did kind of get onto NASDAQ and then they dropped off again because there was some issue with the listing documentation, I believe. They'll be getting back on NASDAQ, I'd expect, very shortly. And I think I've probably, unless there's a massive crash in the price on this one again, I think my position in PKKFF, or TNT as its NASDAQ ticker is probably now full. So last but not least, the one you've been waiting for, and my largest stock position is now Boohoo, and I've taken strong advantage of the decline in their share price following earnings, and also the impact that the ASOS earnings, which were also received negatively by the market, have had on them. So again, I've consistently been reducing my average on this one, and I'll leave a link at the end so you can find out how. Yeah, look at this. This is a great opportunity. I think I bought in the 180s. Yeah, I bought more at £2.11 after the initial drop, and then it went down further, but more at 187. So my average has come right down on the stock. You can see here my position on ShareSite, which is a great little portfolio management tool. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to check it out. My current average is here. My cost base per share is £2.32. And bear in mind, originally it was over £3. My first tranche that I purchased, you can see here, £3.34. I've really reduced that right down. So that's the position, 19% down. Not worried about it. Company's still growing well. I think it's still being pretty well managed. They're dealing very aggressively with the supplier issues. I think they'll be absolutely fine. I can see this being a £4 stock again in the future. No trouble at all, possibly even £5 if they manage their execution strongly. So that's Boohoo, and you can see here 4p19. I think they're still growing revenue at 20%. So that feels like quite a good ratio between the two. So it's now my largest stock holding, and I'll be keeping an eye on it to see what happens. Click on the screen now to see my very detailed analysis of Boohoo that I completed recently, where I look at their most recent results